Donovan Reeves was 38 years old, 3 hours out of surgery, when he learned what his sacrifice was actually worth. He'd just given his wife Denise one of his own kidneys, a 9-year marriage's ultimate act of devotion, no hesitation, no second thoughts. He was still groggy, tubes in his arm, drifting in a hospital recovery bay, when he heard her voice through the thin curtain separating his bed from the hallway, soft, affectionate, talking to a man named Preston, saying she just had to keep playing devoted wife a little while longer until his recovery made her leaving look less suspicious, mentioning a policy, a payout, laughing about how easy he'd made it for her. Denise had no idea her husband was awake, no idea he could hear every word. She thought the man she'd just carved open was too sedated, too weak, too trusting to ever find out. She was wrong. And behind that curtain, Donovan made a decision that would end her exactly the way she'd planned to end him, when she least expected it. Before we jump into the story, comment where in the world you are watching from and subscribe, because tomorrow's story is one you need to hear. The alarm never got the chance. Donovan Reeves was already awake at 4:47 in the morning, sitting on the edge of the bed in the dark, one sock on and one sock in his hand. The bedroom was quiet, except for the soft sound of Denise breathing behind him. He could hear the rhythm of it, slow, deep, easy. She was still asleep. He looked at her over his shoulder. She was curled on her side, one hand tucked under her cheek, her braids fanned out across the pillow. In the gray dark of the room, she looked peaceful. She looked like herself, the way she'd looked the first night they ever stayed in this house together, 9 years ago, when they'd slept on an air mattress because the furniture hadn't come yet, and they'd thought it was the funniest thing in the world. He reached over and pulled the blanket up over her shoulder. Then he put on his second sock and went downstairs to make coffee. The kitchen was the part of the house that felt most like theirs. A corkboard next to the fridge held a grocery list, a birthday card from his mother, and a photo from their anniversary trip to Savannah. Donovan in a white linen shirt, Denise laughing at something off-camera, mid-turn, her whole face open. He'd taped it up himself. Denise had never taken it down. He stood at the counter while the coffee brewed and looked at that photo for a long moment. Then he poured 2 cups. She came downstairs 20 minutes later, moving slow, still warm from sleep. She took the mug from his hand without a word and leaned her forehead against his shoulder. "You should have woken me," she said. "You needed the sleep." She lifted her head. Her eyes were a little glassy, not quite tears, but something close. "Donovan, I'm fine," he said. He meant it. She set her mug down and held his face in both hands. "You are the best man I have ever known in my life." Her voice was low and firm. "Do you hear me?" He smiled. "I hear you." She kissed him once, then pressed her forehead to his again and closed her eyes. He breathed her in. Cocoa butter and something faintly floral. 9 years, and he still knew exactly what she smelled like in the morning. "Let's go get you a kidney," he said. She laughed. It broke the moment just right. They took Donovan's truck. He drove. Denise sat in the passenger seat with her hospital bag in her lap, her fingers worrying at the zipper, pulling it halfway, then pushing it back. Outside, Atlanta was still mostly dark. The highway was empty in the way it only gets in that small window before the city wakes up. Streetlights casting orange pools across wet asphalt, no one else in either direction. Odessa lived 20 minutes off their route, but Donovan had already told her they'd stop. She'd been up since 4. He knew she had. She was standing on the porch when they pulled up, arms crossed against the morning cold, a house robe over her clothes and her reading glasses pushed up on her head like she'd been in the middle of something important. "My baby," she said, when Donovan got out, and she hugged him first and hard and long. Then she looked over his shoulder at Denise. Denise! Her voice was warm enough. She hugged her too, but her eyes stayed level and clear over Denise's shoulder. Inside, Odessa had coffee waiting and a plate of toast neither of them touched. She sat across from them at the kitchen table with her mug and got right to the point, the way she always did. "Denise, honey, I've been meaning to ask you something." She said it gently. The way you say something gentle when you've decided you are going to say it, no matter what. When you first started feeling off, the tiredness, the swelling, when was that exactly? Denise smiled. "Mama Reeves, the doctors." "I'm not asking the doctors. I'm asking you." A small pause. Just a half second. But Donovan felt it. "It came on pretty fast," Denise said. "You know how these things go. One day you're fine, and then—" She shook her head, let the sentence carry itself off. "I didn't want to worry anyone until I knew what I was dealing with." Odessa nodded slowly, looked down at her coffee. Mama," Donovan said. He kept his voice easy. "We've got to get to the hospital." Odessa looked at him. Her eyes held something. Not worry exactly, but the feeling underneath worry. The thing that lives beneath it. She reached across the table and covered his hand with both of hers. "You're a good man," she said quietly. "You've always been a good man." They checked in at 6:15. The hospital was already humming. Orderlies pushing carts, nurses moving in pairs, the PA system crackling softly overhead. The smell was clean and antiseptic and faintly metallic. Donovan had never liked hospitals, but he walked through the automatic doors feeling calm. He'd made his decision. There was nothing left to be nervous about. At the surgical prep bay, they were separated. A nurse walked Denise through a set of double doors to the left. Donovan was guided right, down a narrower corridor, into a bay where he changed into a gown and let them start his IV, while a young anesthesiologist with tired eyes explained what the next few hours would look like. He didn't hear most of it. He was looking at the small gap between the curtain and the wall, watching the corridor, watching for her. And then, there she was. They'd brought her past in a wheelchair, and she turned her head and found him through the glass partition. And she smiled. She put her hand to her heart. He put his hand to his. The anesthesiologist said his name, asked him to count backward from 10. He got to 7. Denise's face was the last thing he saw. He came back in pieces. First, there was light, pale and flat, coming from everywhere at once. Then sound. A slow, steady beep somewhere to his left. The soft creak of a shoe on linoleum. A voice far down a hallway saying something he couldn't make out. Then, the pain. Not sharp. More like a deep, settled weight in his left side, like someone had pressed a fist into his ribs and left it there. He tried to take a slow breath, and the weight shifted, and reminded him exactly where he was and what he'd done. He'd done it. It was over. The thought moved through him like warm water. He blinked at the ceiling. The tiles were white with small gray flecks. One of the fluorescent lights above him buzzed faintly. An IV line ran into the back of his right hand, taped down with 2 strips of white medical tape. A pulse monitor was clipped to his index finger, blinking a quiet green. He didn't try to move. He just lay there, breathing through the weight in his side, feeling the slow, satisfied heaviness of a thing that was finished. She was going to be okay. That was all that mattered. That was the only thing he'd needed to know when he woke up. And he already knew it. He could feel it somehow. The way you feel when a long-held tension finally releases. He closed his eyes again. He didn't know how much time passed. Maybe minutes, maybe longer. The recovery bay was quiet, except for the monitors and the occasional sound of footsteps passing outside the curtain. His curtain. He was aware of it now. A thin partition, pale blue, hanging from a ceiling track about 2 feet to his right. It separated his bay from the alcove beyond it, where there was a small chair and a window ledge family members used to wait. He could hear her before he fully understood who he was hearing. The voice was soft, like she was keeping the volume down on purpose, low and private. A warmth in it he recognized instantly. but not the warmth she used when she talked to him. Something different. Looser. Like she'd taken something off. I know. But it's done now. A small pause. The hard part's over. Donovan didn't move. He lay completely still, eyes on the ceiling, and he listened. Preston. Stop. A short laugh. Quiet and easy. The laugh she made when she wasn't embarrassed, just pleased. He's still out. They said at least another hour. Preston. The name landed in his chest like a dropped stone. I just need a little more time. That's all. Her voice dropped even lower, and Donovan had to focus to hold on to each word. 6 weeks, maybe 8. Long enough that it doesn't look. You know how it looks if I leave while he's still in a compression break. A pause. She was listening. I know what I said, and I meant it. Another pause. Shorter. The policy's already filed, Preston. That part's done. If something had gone wrong in there, we'd have been fine either way. She said it the way you'd say the deposit already cleared. Plain, clean, not cruel exactly, just empty of anything that would suggest she understood what she was saying. But it didn't go wrong, so we moved to Plan B. She laughed again at something he said. Soft and warm. Donovan stared at the ceiling. He did not move. He did not make a sound. Something cold had come into him. Not rage, not yet. Something quieter and much more dangerous. It moved through his chest and down into his hands, and it just sat there, waiting. The policy's already filed. He turned the words over once, then again. He'd had to update his life insurance before the surgery. Standard procedure for a major operation, the hospital's financial coordinator had said. Donovan had signed the forms without looking hard because Denise had handled most of the paperwork, and he'd trusted her to handle it. He'd trusted her to handle everything. The pulse monitor kept blinking green. His heartbeat on the screen was slow and even. He was grateful for small things. Outside the curtain, Denise said, I have to go, okay? I'll call you tonight. A beat. Me too. Then quiet. He heard her shift in the chair, heard her exhale once, long and slow, the way you exhale when a weight comes off you. Then the soft sound of the curtain rings moving along the track. The curtain pulled back. She was standing in the gap, holding her phone loosely at her side, a soft smile on her face. Her eyes were a little bright, the look she used when she was performing tenderness, though he couldn't have named it as performance until this exact moment. She reached out and touched the rail of his bed. Hey, she said softly. There he is. She tilted her head. How are you feeling, baby? Donovan looked at her. He let his eyes go soft and tired the way they would if he'd only just surfaced. He let his mouth pull into something small and weak. Like I got hit by a truck, he said. His voice came out low and rough. She laughed quietly and squeezed the bed rail. That means it's working. The room was quiet. Denise had gone maybe 4 minutes ago. Coffee run, she'd said, already reaching for her purse. You need anything, baby? Water? Crackers? He'd shaken his head, and she'd kissed his forehead, and left, and he'd listened to her heels click down the hallway until there was nothing. Now it was just him, and the monitors, and the pale afternoon light coming through the window blinds in thin, flat bars. He breathed in slowly through his nose, let it out. Then he thought about it, all of it, clear and cold, the way he thought through a job site problem. No panic, just inventory. What do I know? What does it mean? What do I do next? It's done now. Her voice. The policy's already filed. If something had gone wrong in there, we'd have been fine either way. He stared at the bar of light on the ceiling tile above him. He thought about the surgery paperwork he'd signed 2 weeks before the operation. Denise had laid the forms out on the kitchen table in a neat stack, already tabbed with little yellow sticky arrows. Just sign where the arrows are, Don. I already handled the rest. He'd signed everything without sitting down. He'd been standing at the counter in his work boots, still dusty from the sight. He pressed his lips together. He wasn't a man who moved fast when it mattered. That was the thing people sometimes misread about him, his stillness. On a job site, the guys who panicked first were the ones who got people hurt. You learned to stop, breathe, name the problem before you touched it. This was the same. He was in a hospital bed. He had a fresh incision in his left side held together with sutures. He was on pain medication that slowed his thinking by about 20% and made his hands feel slightly distant from his body. He had no documents, no dates, no names written down anywhere, no proof of anything except his own memory of a phone call he'd heard through a curtain while half sedated. If he said something now, if he grabbed Denise's wrist the moment she walked back in and asked her to explain herself, what happened? She denied it. She cried. She told him he was confused from the anesthesia. Maybe she was right to say it because who would argue with her? He was the man in the bed. She was the woman who'd sat by his side all day. He'd lose, not because he was wrong, because he had nothing. He reached over slowly and picked up his phone from the bedside table. The movement pulled at his left side, and he breathed through it. He found Tasha's number and pressed call. She picked up on the second ring. "How you feeling?" "Mama said the surgery went fine." "It went fine," he said. He kept his voice easy and low. "Listen, I need a favor." A small pause on her end. Tasha was a paralegal. She had a way of going quiet and focused the moment a conversation shifted registers. He could feel it happen now through the phone. "Okay, I need you to start pulling some financial records for me." Quietly. He picked his words carefully. "Our joint accounts. Any insurance policies filed in the last 6 months. Credit cards too, if you can get eyes on statements." Another pause. Longer this time. "Donovan." Her voice had dropped. "What am I looking for?" "I don't know yet," he said. "Just keep it organized. Don't say anything to anyone, not even Mama, okay?" "Okay," she said. No questions, just that. He exhaled. "I appreciate you. Don't thank me yet." She paused again. "You sure you're all right?" "I'm fine," he said. "I'll explain later." He ended the call and set the phone back on the table and looked at the window. Outside, the sky had gone a pale gray. A pigeon was sitting on the window ledge, completely still, facing the glass. He heard Denise's heels in the hall. By the time the door swung open, he had his eyes half closed and his head turned toward her, easy and slow, the picture of a man running on fumes. She came in holding 2 paper coffee cups and smiling. "There's a whole little cafe on the 2nd floor," she said brightly. "I didn't even know." He managed a small grin. "Fancy." She set her cup down and came to the bed and smoothed the blanket near his feet, a gesture so practiced it looked completely natural. "Drink some water, baby. The nurse said your fluid intake's been low." "Yes, ma'am," he said. 20 minutes later, a doctor came in with 2 residents, and then a floor nurse Donovan had seen twice already that day, and they all stood around his bed in a loose semicircle looking genuinely moved. The doctor, Dr. Patel, whose handshake was very firm, spoke about what living donation meant to families like theirs, about courage, about love in its most concrete form. "You don't see this kind of thing every day," he said, glancing between them. "This is a beautiful example of what sacrifice really means." Denise reached across and took Donovan's hand. Her grip was warm and steady. "He's always been that kind of man," she said softly. Donovan smiled at the doctor and nodded along and kept Denise's hand in his, and didn't squeeze it even once harder than he should have. They discharged him on the 3rd day. He came out through the hospital's main exit in a wheelchair. Hospital policy, still in the compression brace, moving carefully. Denise walked beside him, holding his overnight bag and his discharge folder, talking to the orderly about parking validation. Outside, the air was cold and sharp and real. Denise helped him into the passenger seat of her car, tucking the seatbelt across him the way you'd handle something fragile, and then she stood back and took her phone out. "One picture," she said, already framing the shot. "You look so good." He turned toward her and smiled, full and warm, the smile of a man overcome with gratitude. She posted it before they reached the parking garage exit. He saw the caption when she turned her phone toward him to show him the likes already coming in. "My hero husband. So proud of this man. Home where he belongs." 3 heart emojis. A red cross. "Beautiful," he said. He turned and watched the hospital disappear in the side mirror as she pulled out onto the street. Behind them, the building shrank, and then was gone. He turned back to the road ahead and said nothing at all. The couch had become his world. 7 days out of the hospital, and Donovan's life had shrunk down to the length of it. The cream-colored sectional in the living room, where he spent most of his hours propped against 2 pillows, a blanket across his legs, the TV on at low volume. He moved slowly, carefully. Every trip to the bathroom required thought. He looked exactly like a man who had nothing left in him. That was the point. Denise was attentive. She brought him water without being asked and refilled his prescription without complaining about the drive. She cooked actual meals instead of ordering in. Soup, soft rice, baked chicken with no seasoning because the discharge paperwork said easy on sodium for now. She checked his incision site each morning with what looked like genuine concern, leaning close, her brow furrowed. She was good at it. He had to give her that. But her phone never left her hand, and it was always face down on whatever surface was closest to her. The coffee table, the kitchen counter, the bathroom shelf, always face down, always within reach, always picked up and checked the second she thought he was asleep or distracted by the TV. He noticed. He said nothing. He noticed other things, too. On Tuesday, she mentioned a work retreat. Casual. The way you bring up something boring. "There's this 2-day thing next month. It's honestly more of an obligation than anything. You'll probably be feeling much better by then." He nodded, half watching the TV, but he filed it. Dates, place, the way she'd said obligation a half-second too fast, like the word was pre-selected. That night, after she'd gone upstairs to bed, he reached under the couch cushion and pulled out the small spiral notebook he'd been keeping there since the second day home. He clicked the pen open and wrote it down. Date, she mentioned it. The dates of the retreat. The phrase she'd used. The way she hadn't looked at him when she said it. The notebook had 7 entries already. Small things. A name dropped twice in the same week. A credit card statement that had come in the mail and been intercepted before it reached the kitchen table where mail always went. A Friday evening she'd come home 40 minutes later than usual, without explaining why. Small, but stacked. They had weight. Tasha came on Thursday, arriving at 10 in the morning with a canvas grocery bag and a container of their mother's chicken stew. She played her role well. Big sister come to fuss over her recovering brother, talking loud enough for Denise to hear her from the next room, complaining about parking on their street. Denise left at 11:30 for a client meeting. She kissed Donovan's forehead and told Tasha not to let him overdo it, and reminded them both the home health aide was coming Friday. The door closed behind her. Tasha waited 30 seconds. Then she set her laptop on the kitchen table and sat down and looked at Donovan steadily. "Close that window blind," she said. He did, moving slow and careful across the kitchen. Then he sat down across from her. She had printed documents in a manila folder and a spreadsheet open on her screen, color-coded in a way that meant she'd been at this for days. He watched her pull up a scanned file. Patient records, header redacted, but the content clear enough. "Talk to me," he said. 14 months, Tasha said. Her voice was flat and even, the way she got when she was containing something. That's when her kidneys were first flagged as failing. Not 3 months ago. Not 6. 14 months. She turned the laptop toward him. This is the original diagnosis date. This is when she told you. On the screen, 2 dates, both of them clear. The gap between them was enormous. Donovan looked at the screen. He didn't move. Tasha kept talking. She let it get worse, Don. She didn't have to wait that long. She could have been on the transplant list earlier. Had options. Instead, she managed it quietly. Medically, there are prescriptions in here going back over a year. And she waited until her numbers dropped bad enough that the doctors started pushing for living donation as the fastest route. She paused. Until you were the fastest route. The refrigerator hummed in the corner. He thought about the kitchen table, the neat stack of forms, the yellow sticky arrows. Just sign where the arrows are, Don. He thought about the surgery paperwork and how quickly she'd had all of it ready. He thought about the word urgency, which the doctors had used so many times leading up to the transplant. How urgency had a way of shutting down questions. Urgency meant now, not later. Urgency meant there was no time to wonder. She had built the urgency. Slowly. Over 14 months. He reached over and closed the laptop. The screen went dark. His jaw was tight. Everything else was still. Bishop Okafor's office was on the 14th floor of a glass building downtown, the kind of place where everything was clean and deliberate. Dark wood desk, framed certifications on the wall, a small potted plant in the corner that somehow never looked like it needed watering. The city spread out behind him through the floor-to-ceiling window. Bishop himself matched the room. Pressed shirt, reading glasses pushed up on his head, a legal pad already open on the desk when Donovan walked in. They'd been friends since freshman year at Howard. 2 decades of each other's lives, and Bishop read people the way most folks read weather. He took one look at Donovan easing himself into the chair across from him and said nothing for a moment. "You didn't come here about estate planning," Bishop said. "No," Donovan said. "I didn't." He told him everything. He kept his voice low and even, the way he gave progress reports on job sites. No emotion in the delivery. Just facts, sequenced. The recovery bay. The curtain. Denise's voice. Her words. Preston's name. The way she'd laughed. The phrase, the policy. Then Tasha's findings. The diagnosis date. The 14-month gap. The manufactured urgency. Bishop listened without interrupting. He wrote nothing on the legal pad. He just listened, his eyes steady behind his glasses, his hands flat on the desk. When Donovan finished, Bishop was quiet for a moment. "The policy comment," he said. "She used that word specifically?" She said it like he already knew what it was. Bishop nodded slowly. "Okay, give me a few days." The call came 4 days later, on a Wednesday afternoon while Denise was at work. Donovan was on the back patio in a chair, compression brace still on, a glass of water on the small table beside him. Bishop's voice was careful, measured. "I found it," he said. A life insurance rider, attached to the primary policy Donovan had carried for years, the one that named Denise as beneficiary. The rider had been filed 11 months ago, weeks before the transplant was ever scheduled. It was a surgical mortality clause. If Donovan died during or within 30 days of a covered surgical procedure, the payout increased by 60%. 60%. Donovan said nothing. "I want to be straight with you," Bishop said. "I can't tell you what was in her head when she filed this. Could be she was scared. Could be she was planning. What I can tell you is that this rider was filed quietly, without your signature. She was the policyholder of record on the attached account, and the timing lines up with the window. She was managing her diagnosis privately. The yard was quiet. A bird moved in the oak tree at the back fence. She bet on me not making it, Donovan said. His voice was flat. She made sure she'd be covered if you didn't. Bishop paused. There's a difference, technically. But yeah, that's what the paperwork says. Donovan thought about the operating table. the anesthesia pulling him under. Denise's face, soft, grateful, the last thing he'd seen before the lights went. How he'd carried that image with him into the dark like something warm. She had already filed the paperwork before that moment ever happened. "What do I do with this?" Donovan asked. "Right now?" "Nothing," Bishop said. "You let me keep pulling. I want to look at every joint account, both credit lines, the home equity. I need a full picture before you move anything. And Don," he paused, "don't touch the finances. Don't close accounts. Don't move money. Not yet. You do that now. She knows." "I know," Donovan said. "I'm going to protect you. But you've got to give me time to build the wall before you knock the door down." Donovan said he understood. He thanked Bishop and ended the call and sat there in the yard with his hands on his knees for a long time. Dinner that evening was pasta. Denise had made it from scratch, which she only did when she was in a good mood. She'd even lit the candles on the dining room table, the short white ones they kept in a drawer and almost never used. "How was your day?" she asked, twirling her fork. "Quiet," he said. "Called Bishop. Talked through some estate stuff." She nodded, taking a sip of wine. "Good. That's smart, especially after everything. Might as well get the paperwork in order." She smiled at him across the table, warm and easy. "I keep saying we've been putting that off." "You're right," he said. He smiled back. He ate everything on his plate, complimented the pasta, asked about her afternoon. He sat across from her for 40 minutes and felt nothing show on his face. That night, he lay beside her in the dark, listening to her breathe slow and even as she slept. Her shoulder rose and fell. Her hair was spread across her pillow. She looked peaceful in a way that had once made him feel safe. He stared at the ceiling, the rider, the 14 months, the curtain. Every piece of it sat inside him, cold and organized, like a blueprint rolled out on a clean table. He was going to find every last thing. He was going to know the full shape of it before he did anything at all. He stared at the ceiling. He did not sleep. The coffee shop on Millbrook Avenue was the kind of place that stayed half empty on weekday mornings. Mismatched chairs, the smell of dark roast, a ceiling fan turning slow overhead. Donovan had picked it deliberately, far enough from their neighborhood that he wouldn't run into anyone who knew Denise, close enough to home that the drive wouldn't strain his side. Tasha was already there when he walked in, a manila folder on the table in front of her, a cortado she hadn't touched going cold beside it. She watched him ease into the chair across from her and waited until he had his coffee before she said a word. "How's the brace?" "Annoying," he said. "Good. Means you're healing." She slid the folder across to him. "You're going to want to read that before I explain it." He opened it. The top page was a printed log. Shift records from County General, formatted in neat columns. Dates, times, names. The second page was a list of visitor sign-ins from the surgical recovery wing, the same wing where Donovan had spent 4 days after the transplant. He read slowly. Tasha let him. "Yvonne," he said. "Yvonne," she confirmed. He looked up. Tasha leaned forward, both forearms on the table. "She's been falsifying Denise's hospital records for over a year. Shift logs, visitor consultations. There are 14 entries in that wing alone where Yvonne logged Denise as attending a patient consultation. The timestamps line up exactly with Preston's known schedule. I cross-referenced his company calendar." She tapped the third page in the folder. Denise wasn't there for consultations. She was using the hospital as a meeting point. Donovan looked back down at the pages. His thumb moved slowly across the top line of dates. "And when Yvonne came to visit me," he said. Not a question. He already knew. He was just saying it out loud, letting it take up the space it deserved. "She was in and out of your room 3 times during your recovery stay," Tasha said, her voice dropping a little. "Every one of those visits happened within an hour of Denise leaving the floor." He thought about Yvonne's face, the way she'd squeezed his hand. You're doing so good, Donovan. She's going to be fine because of you. Her perfume, something floral and light. The easy warmth of someone who'd been around for years, someone he'd sat across from at birthday dinners and holiday tables. He thought about how it felt to have someone check on you when you're lying in a hospital bed with a fresh incision and drains in your side. He closed the folder. She was reporting back, he said. I think so. Maybe making sure you were still sedated, still out of it. Maybe just keeping tabs. Tasha's jaw was tight. Either way, it wasn't a friendly visit. He nodded once, set the folder down, picked up his coffee, and took a long sip. There was a couple 2 tables over laughing about something on a phone screen. The ceiling fan turned. A barista called out a name. She had a whole system, Donovan said. It wasn't just Denise and Preston. Yvonne built the scaffolding. Built it, maintained it, and covered the seams, Tasha said. For over a year, Don. This wasn't something that slipped into place. Somebody had to keep choosing it. He didn't answer that. There was nothing useful in his anger right now, so he set it down the same way he'd set the folder down. Deliberately, to the side, within reach, but not in his hands. Add it all to the file, he said. Denise called at 4:30. He was back home, sitting at the desk in the small office off the hallway, the folder open in front of him. He let it ring once, set his face, and answered. Hey, baby. Her voice came through bright and easy, a little wind noise behind it like she was outside. Just wanted to check in. How are you feeling? Better today, he said. Got some sun on the back patio. Took it easy. Good. You need to rest, not try to do too much. A small laugh, fond and familiar. I know you. The second you feel 60%, you start acting like you're 100. He smiled into the phone. It didn't reach anything behind it. I'm being careful. How's the retreat? Long. Lots of sessions. You know how these things are. A pause. I miss you. Miss you too, he said. The words came out smooth and even, like he'd said them 1,000 times, which he had. The difference was that now they were just sound. I'll be back Sunday, she said. I'll cook something good. I'll look forward to it. Okay. Get some rest, Donovan. Her voice softened on his name, the way it used to make him feel seen. I love you, he said. The call ended. He sat for a moment with the phone face down on the desk. Then he reached into the open folder, found the legal pad Tasha had left with him, and uncapped his pen. He wrote Yvonne Castile's name at the bottom of the list. Then he drew a clean line connecting her name to Denise's. Denise came home Sunday evening smelling like airport, and a perfume he didn't recognize. She dropped her bag in the entryway, crossed the living room in 3 quick steps, and wrapped her arms around him like she'd been gone a month. He held her back. He let his hands settle at her waist the way they always had. I missed this, she said into his shoulder. Me too, he said. She pulled back and looked at him, both palms on his face. Her eyes did the thing they always did, that warm, searching look that used to make him feel chosen. You look good, she said. Better than when I left. Rest helped. She smiled, kissed him once, then went to unpack. She cooked Monday night. Salmon, roasted vegetables, a playlist she knew he liked drifting out of the kitchen speaker. She talked while she cooked, conference takeaways, a campaign idea she'd been turning over, a story about a hotel elevator that got stuck between floors. He sat at the kitchen island and listened, and asked the right questions. Preston had everyone cracking up at the dinner Thursday, she said, setting the pan on the burner. He does this impression of their old regional VP. I'm telling you, the whole table. Preston's your boss, right? Donovan said. Easy even, mildly curious. Yeah. He's good people, honestly. Smart. She glanced over her shoulder. I actually think you two would get along. I was thinking, you know Mom's birthday dinner next month? What if I invited him? He's been talking about expanding the firm's vendor relationships. Might be good networking for you. He looked at her. She turned back to the stove and adjusted the flame. "Could be interesting," he said. "I'll mention it to him." She reached for the olive oil. "He's easy to be around. You'll like him." He picked up his water glass, took a slow sip. "Sure," he said. "Why not?" The refinancing paperwork showed up Tuesday. It was sitting on the counter when he came downstairs in the morning. A manila envelope with the lender's logo in the corner. Denise was already dressed for work, coffee in hand, and she slid it toward him with a look that was all casual warmth. "The broker sent those over. I talked to him a few weeks ago about locking in a better rate." She touched his arm. "With everything you've been through, I figured the lower monthly payment would take some pressure off. All it needs is both signatures." He picked up the envelope, turned it over in his hands. "Makes sense," he said. "I'll look it over. It's pretty straightforward. Nothing complicated." A small smile. "You don't need to stress about the details. It's just the rate adjustment." "I hear you." He set it back down. "My head's still a little foggy in the mornings. Let me sit with it tonight when I'm sharper." "Of course." She patted his hand. "No rush." She kissed him on the cheek and left for work. He waited until her car was out of the driveway. Then he picked up his phone and called Bishop. "She put refinancing paperwork in front of me this morning," he said. "Don't touch it." Bishop's voice was already steady, already moving. "I'll have a hold on those joint accounts by end of day. She won't be able to initiate anything unilaterally. Not the house, not the savings. Nothing moves without your explicit sign-off flagged through me." "How visible is that?" "To her? Not at all. It'll look completely routine on her end." A pause. "She won't know until she tries to push something through." Donovan set the envelope in the kitchen drawer and closed it. "Good," he said. Tasha came by Thursday. She had a single sheet in her hand when he opened the door. No folder, no laptop, just one printed page that she held out to him the moment she stepped inside. He took it. It was a hotel receipt. The Halcyon Suites, downtown. Check-in and check-out dates printed clearly at the top. He read the dates once, then again. The check-in was a Tuesday. The check-out was a Thursday. He had been admitted to the ICU that Monday. "Preston's name is on the reservation," Tasha said, her voice quiet. "Denise is listed as the second guest. I pulled the conference Yvonne logged her down for. There was no conference. Yvonne filed a continuing education record to cover the days." She stopped. "She left the hospital, Dawn, while you were in the ICU. She left and checked into a hotel with him." He stood in the hallway and looked at the paper. He didn't say anything for a long moment. He thought about the monitors, the drains, the ceiling tiles he'd stared at when he couldn't sleep. He thought about the nights Denise wasn't there, and all the reasonable explanations he'd given her inside his own head. He walked to his office. He set the hotel receipt down next to the insurance rider, next to Tasha's shift logs, next to the diagnosis records, next to the credit card statements. He looked at all of it spread across the desk. Then he looked up at Tasha. He called Bishop on speaker. When Bishop picked up, Donovan said, simply and clearly, "It's time." Denise brought it up on a Wednesday morning, over coffee. "I want to do something special," she said. She was leaning against the counter, mug in both hands, already dressed for work. "A real dinner. Sit down, home-cooked, everyone together." She smiled at him across the kitchen. "You've been through so much, babe. You deserve a celebration." "Who were you thinking?" he asked. "Your mom, Tasha." She paused, like she was adding it up. "Yvonne, too. She was so good to us during everything. It feels right to have her there." "Yeah," he said. "It does." She crossed the kitchen and squeezed his hand. "I'll plan the whole thing. You don't have to lift a finger. Just show up and let people love on you." He smiled at her. "You don't have to do all that." "I want to," she said. "Let me do this." She kissed him on the cheek and left the room to get her bag. He sat at the kitchen island and finished his coffee. That same afternoon, he drove to Tasha's office. She had everything laid out on her conference table when he arrived. 3 separate folders, each labeled, each tabbed. The insurance rider in the first, the hotel records and Yvonne's falsified shift logs in the second, the medical diagnosis timeline in the third, 14 months of silence, documented clearly in Denise's own physician's records. There was also a printed transcript clipped to the inside cover of the first folder. The voicemail, Tasha said. He'd obtained it through his carrier. A message Denise left for Preston 2 days after the surgery. Recovered legally, logged, and time-stamped. He'd listened to it once. That was enough. The divorce filing is done, Tasha said. Attorney's holding it, ready to submit the moment you give the word. Asset protection is already in place. Bishop locked everything down. She tapped the edge of the table. She can't touch the house, the accounts, none of it. And the settlement terms given the insurance rider alone are going to push her toward signing fast rather than fighting. Because fighting means a fraud investigation, Donovan said. Exactly. Tasha folded her hands. She's not going to want that conversation in a courtroom. He looked at the 3 folders. He thought about what it had taken to fill them. Weeks of being still. Weeks of watching her cook dinner and kiss him on the cheek and talk about Preston like he was just some guy from work. Preston's employer, he said. Their HR policy. Non-fraternization clause. Preston is her direct superior. I have it in writing from their employee handbook. She slid a page across to him. HR Ethics Board receives their packet the same night. And his wife? Tasha nodded. Packet's ready. Hand-delivered, if that's how you want to do it. He picked up the folders one by one. He stacked them in order, set them inside his bag. Okay, he said. He went to see Odessa on Friday. She lived 20 minutes away in the same house where he and Tasha had grown up. A yellow craftsman with a porch swing and a garden she maintained like a second career. She was waiting at the door when he pulled up, which meant Tasha had called ahead. He sat with her at the kitchen table. He walked her through everything. Not quickly, not emotionally, calmly, the way he would have walked a client through a project brief. When he was done, she was quiet for a moment. She looked at her hands, then at him. That child sat in this kitchen, she said. Ate at this table. Let me pray over that boy before his surgery. She exhaled slowly, and she was already planning her way out. Yes, he said. Odessa nodded. Once, like something had settled in her. Okay, I'll be there. Her voice was steady. Tell me what you need from me. Nothing, he said. Just be there. She reached across the table and covered his hand with hers. She didn't say anything else. She didn't need to. Saturday was menu planning. Denise moved through the kitchen with a notepad, opening cabinet doors, checking what she had, asking him questions. He sat at the island and answered them. She asked if his mother had any dietary restrictions. She already knew the answer, but he gave it anyway. She asked about candles, tablecloths, whether they should use the good dishes. He told her to use the good dishes. She looked happy, genuinely, fully happy, relaxed in a way she hadn't been in months, her shoulders down, her laugh easy. She stood at the counter, making a grocery list and hummed to herself, and he watched her and thought about absolutely nothing. Sunday evening arrived gray and cool. Denise had spent most of the afternoon cooking. The house smelled like rosemary and garlic, and the table in the dining room was set with the white cloth and the good dishes, just like he'd said. She'd lit the entry candles already. She stood at the stove in a deep burgundy dress, stirring something slowly, satisfied. The doorbell rang at 6. Odessa came in first. Coat, purse, a covered dish she'd brought anyway. She hugged Donovan, then nodded once at Denise across the room. Tasha came in behind her. Then Yvonne, smiling wide, a bottle of wine tucked under her arm. Denise turned from the stove, face bright, and said, "Everyone's here. Come in, come in. Dinner's almost ready." She lit the last 2 candles on the table and stood back to admire the setting, completely at ease. The plates had been cleared. The table looked the way Denise had wanted it to. The white cloth, the good dishes, the candles burning low. She'd worked all day to make it right, and it showed. She picked up her wine glass and looked around the table with the warm, satisfied expression of a woman who had pulled off exactly what she intended. "I just want to say something," she started. Her voice was soft, practiced. "This man, right here," she nodded toward Donovan, "gave me his kidney. He didn't hesitate, didn't ask questions, just said yes." She smiled. "That's the kind of man he is, and I am so grateful. We are so lucky." She lifted her glass. Donovan set his down. "Actually," he said, "I want to say something first." Denise blinked. She kept her smile in place. "Of course, babe." She lowered her glass slightly. "Go ahead." He didn't raise his voice. He didn't touch his wine. He folded his hands on the table the way he would at the start of a project meeting, and he looked at her the same way, calm, level, already 3 steps ahead. "2 days after the surgery," he said, "while I was still in recovery, you made a phone call. You were in the alcove next to my bed. You thought I was still under." He paused. "I wasn't." Denise's smile didn't disappear. It just got careful. "Donovan, you told him you had to keep playing the devoted wife a little while longer, until I was recovered enough that you leaving wouldn't look suspicious." He said it the way you read a receipt back to someone. Plain. Accurate. You were talking to Preston. The table was completely still. Tasha didn't move. Odessa set her glass down without a sound. Yvonne's hands were flat on the table. "That's not—" Denise started. "You were on heavy anesthesia. You were barely—" "I was awake." He said it once. Moved on. He reached down beside his chair and lifted a folder. He set it on the table and opened it without hurry. "You also mentioned a policy during that call." He slid a single page to the center of the table. "A life insurance rider. Taken out on me. Filed 6 weeks before the transplant. Increased payout, specifically tied to surgical mortality risk." He tapped the date at the top of the page. "While we were discussing the donation," Denise laughed. "It came out too fast. That is standard paperwork. My financial advisor recommended—" "Bishop Okafor is my financial advisor," Donovan said. "He found it. He explained it. And he's prepared to explain it again to any court that asks." The laugh died. Denise looked at Tasha. Tasha looked back at her without blinking. Donovan opened the second folder. He turned to Yvonne. Yvonne had been very still for the last 2 minutes. Her wineglass was untouched. Her eyes were moving between Donovan and the door. "Yvonne?" He said her name the way you say a word you've thought about for a long time. "You were in and out of my hospital room the whole time I was in recovery. Checking on me. Bringing things. I thought that was friendship." Yvonne opened her mouth. "The shift logs don't match," he said. "Yours and Denise's visitor sign-in records. For over a year, you've been falsifying documentation to give Denise cover to see Preston. Hospital consultations that weren't consultations." He set the second set of papers on the table. "These are the records Tasha pulled. They're dated. They're time-stamped. And they've already been reviewed by someone who knows exactly what falsified hospital documentation looks like." Yvonne stood up. She didn't say anything. She picked up her purse from the back of the chair, and she walked to the front door. And she left. The door clicked shut behind her. Denise was gripping the edge of the table now. "This is insane," she said. Her voice had gone tight. "You're doing all of this at a dinner table, in front of your family." Donovan slid the last page across to her. "Hotel records," he said. "Room 412. Check-in Tuesday, check-out Thursday." He let her look at the dates. "That's the week I was in the ICU, 3 days after my surgery. You told the hospital you were at a conference. Yvonne logged the alibi." He folded his hands again. "These are time-stamped." Denise stared at the page. Her mouth opened. Nothing came out. "I built my case the same way I build everything," Donovan said. "Carefully. and I waited until it was airtight." Odessa pushed her chair back. She stood up slowly, and she looked at Denise across the table. Not with anger, not with heat, with the flat, permanent finality of a door being sealed. "You sat at my kitchen table," Odessa said. "You let me pray for that man before he went under the knife for you." She picked up her purse. "Don't call. Don't come by. Don't send word." She smoothed the front of her jacket. "You are done with this family." She walked to the door and stopped beside Donovan's chair. Tasha rose next. Donovan stood last. He buttoned the top button of his shirt, picked up the folders, and followed his mother and his sister out of the dining room. The candles burned on. Denise sat alone at the table she had set, in the house she had planned to take, wearing the dress she had chosen for the night, surrounded by the good dishes and the white cloth, and the guttered remains of every lie she had told. The sight was finished. Donovan stood at the center of it and let himself look. The whole thing, the framing, the drywall, the new roof, all of it had taken 11 weeks. It had come in 4 days ahead of schedule and just under budget. He had built it that way on purpose. That was how he did things now. On purpose. The dinner had been in October. By November, Donovan had personally driven to the home of Preston Wade's wife, a woman named Carol, and handed her an envelope. He didn't explain much. He didn't need to. The hotel records and the voicemails did the talking. Carol had stood in her doorway and read the first page in silence, and Donovan had left before she finished. He had also sent a formal packet to the ethics board at the marketing firm. Preston was Denise's direct superior. There was a non-fraternization policy. There were dated emails. The firm didn't take long. Preston was terminated before Thanksgiving. His marriage was over by December. The divorce was filed in November. Bishop had built a wall around every asset Donovan owned. His savings, his stake in the contracting license, the investment accounts Denise had never known the full details of. When Denise's attorney made noise about a generous settlement, Bishop sat across the table and opened a folder. He explained, in simple and careful language, what the insurance rider looked like to a fraud investigator. He explained what a formal inquiry would cost in both time and public record. Denise signed the settlement 3 weeks later. It was not generous. Yvonne Castile was reported to the state nursing board in January. The falsified documentation was clear enough that the investigation moved quickly. Her license was suspended pending review. Last Tasha had heard, the suspension had become permanent. That was a year ago. The company was called Reeves Okafor Construction. Bishop had come in as the financial partner and investor. Donovan ran operations the same way he always had, methodically, without waste, with a reputation for showing up exactly when he said he would, and finishing exactly what he started. They had 6 active projects. They had turned down 3 more because the timeline didn't fit. Donovan didn't take work he couldn't do right. This one, the one he was standing in now, was Odessa's house. She had been living in the same place for 22 years. The back bedroom had a slow leak in the ceiling she'd patched with a bucket since 2019. The kitchen floor had soft spots near the sink. The porch railing had been held together, Donovan was fairly sure, mostly by paint. He had gutted it. He and his crew had spent 11 weeks rebuilding it from the inside out, while Odessa stayed with Tasha and called every 3 days to ask if they were eating enough. Now it was done. New roof, new floors throughout. The kitchen had been expanded by 4 feet into what used to be a useless side closet. The back porch had a new railing and a ceiling fan she hadn't asked for, but was going to love. Donovan walked the length of the hallway slowly, running one hand along the freshly painted wall. The paint was a warm cream color. Odessa had chosen it from a sample card, holding it up to her kitchen light for a long time before she nodded. 2 of his crew members were doing the final walkthrough at the other end of the house. He could hear them talking in the back bedroom, calm, easy voices, checking measurements, confirming everything was level. He stepped out onto the back porch. The afternoon was cool and clear. The yard backed up to a line of old oak trees, and the light was coming through them at an angle, long and gold and easy, the way it only looked in late fall. He stood at the railing and put both hands on it and leaned his weight into it, testing it the way he always tested things. It held. Somewhere in that same city, Denise was living in a 2-bedroom apartment she hadn't expected to be living in, with a settlement she hadn't expected to sign, calling people who had mostly stopped picking up. The life she had stayed in a marriage for, the house, the security, the version of the future she had planned against his survival, was gone. Not dramatically, not loudly, just gone. Donovan didn't think about her often. When he did, it wasn't with anger. It was closer to the way you think about a bad contract, something you learned from, something that taught you what to look for. One of his crew members leaned out the back door. "Everything checks out," the man said. "She's move-in ready." Donovan nodded. He straightened up from the railing and turned to face the yard, the oak trees, the long gold light coming through. His mother was moving back in tomorrow. His name was on a business that was growing. His body had healed clean. He stood at the center of everything he had built, surrounded by the quiet of a finished thing, and allowed himself a smile. Not forced, not performed, not for anyone's camera. Just his. Real and unhurried and entirely his own. I hope you enjoyed that one. Be sure to like the video and subscribe so you don't miss the next story. I've picked out 2 more for you that I think you'll really like.